Hi, my name is Emily Carter. And this is the story of how my own mother told me I wasn't good enough to sit at my father's birthday dinner, but ended up walking into a restaurant that I secretly owned. If you love stories filled with betrayal, family drama, and a taste of poetic revenge, you're in the right place. Growing up, I always knew I wasn't my mother's favorite. She never said it outright, but children don't need words to know when they're being measured and found lacking. My sister, Clara, was her pride. Top grades, polished manners, and expensive taste. She was the daughter who reflected my mother's social ambitions like a perfect mirror. I, on the other hand, was the blur in the background. I wasn't the worst child, but I was the one who was constantly not enough. Not charming enough, not successful enough, not ambitious enough in her eyes. The only person who ever made me feel like I mattered was my father. Dad wasn't perfect. His hands were always rough. His back always aching from years of running his small construction business, but he believed in me. "You've got something in you, Emily," he used to tell me. "Don't let anyone, not even your own family, convince you otherwise." But nothing could prepare me for the sting of rejection that came just one day before his birthday. Started with a phone call. "Your father's birthday dinner is tomorrow," my mother said, her voice clipped and brisk. "But I don't think you should come." Froze. "What do you mean, Mom? Why wouldn't I come?" "You can't afford it," she said, as if it were the most obvious truth in the world. "We're going to the new fine dining restaurant downtown. It's not cheap, and I don't want you embarrassing yourself when the bill comes." My chest tightened. "Mom, it's Dad's birthday. I don't need to prove anything with money. I just want to be there." "No," she cut me off. "Clara is covering half the bill already. You don't have that kind of money. Better you stay home than sit there looking like you don't belong." The line went quiet after that. I couldn't even bring myself to argue. I just sat there, staring at the wall, listening to the echo of her words in my head. "Better you stay home." Backend index pointing right. If you're feeling hooked already, make sure to subscribe to my channel. There are more twists coming that you won't want to miss. What my mother didn't know, and what no one in my family knew, was that the very restaurant she was talking about was mine. 3 years earlier, I had scraped together every cent I could save. I worked shifts that bled into the night, sold everything I didn't absolutely need, and poured my soul into a dream no one thought I could achieve. I partnered with a chef named Marco, a man who believed in me when nobody else did. Together we built Aurelia, a fine dining restaurant that quickly became one of the city's most talked about spots. But I never told my family. Not because I wanted to keep it a secret forever, but because I wanted to succeed on my own terms. I wanted them to see me as a woman who had worth, not as a daughter who constantly needed to prove herself. And so, while my mother dismissed me as someone who couldn't afford dinner, the truth was far more satisfying. She was planning to step into my world without even realizing it. That night, I lay awake thinking about Dad. I thought about all the times he encouraged me, all the times he defended me when Mom's words cut too deep. He deserved better than this cold, calculated celebration my mother was planning, a performance more than a birthday. I decided then and there. If my mother wanted me invisible, I'd make myself unforgettable. The next evening, when my family walked into Aurelia, expecting just another expensive night out, they'd be greeted not as guests in someone else's world, but as guests in mine. And that was the start of everything. My mother thought she could erase me from my father's birthday. But what she didn't realize was that every wall, every chair, every dish in that restaurant carried my name. Would I use this secret to humiliate her? Or to finally show my father who I had become? Keep reading, because the night was about to take a turn none of them could forget. The morning of my father's birthday carried with it a strange electricity. The air felt heavier, charged with something I couldn't quite name. I woke up before dawn, though sleep had been impossible anyway. Every time I closed my eyes, my mother's voice echoed inside my head, replaying those words she had so carelessly tossed at me. You can't afford it. Better you stay home. I made myself coffee and stood at the window of my small apartment, watching the sun lift itself lazily over the rooftops. To the world outside, it was just another day. But for me, today was the day the balance of power within my family would shift. Today, my mother was walking directly into my life's work, blind to the truth of who I had become. By noon, I was at the restaurant. Aurelia had always felt like an extension of my soul. Its golden lighting, polished hardwood floors, and soft ivory linens weren't just decor. They were chapters of a story I had built brick by brick, recipe by recipe. I ran my hand over the edge of one table, feeling the smooth surface I had once sanded myself before we could afford better furniture. Memories of struggle lingered in every corner of that space. Nights when Marco and I ate leftover bread because we couldn't spare anything more, mornings when I scrubbed dishes because we couldn't yet hire staff. And now, Aurelia stood proud, a place people saved up for weeks just to dine in. It wasn't merely a restaurant. It was proof that I had carved out my own worth in silence, away from the constant belittlement of my mother's gaze. Marco emerged from the kitchen, his apron dusted with flour, his sleeves rolled up. "So," he said, leaning against the counter, "tonight's the night." He nodded. "They'll be here at 7. Are you sure you want to go through with it this way?" he asked gently. "You could just tell them outright. End the secrecy." I shook my head. "No. They wouldn't believe me if I just said it. They need to see it to feel it. My mother needs to sit in this place, taste the food, feel the service, before she learns whose name signs the checks." Marco studied me for a moment, then smiled. "You've got more steel in you than you realize, Emily. All right, let's make tonight unforgettable." The hours slipped by in a blur of preparation. The kitchen hummed with activity. Knives clattering against boards, flames hissing as sauces reduced, the rhythmic sound of pans being lifted and set back down. Waiters rehearsed the seating plan, polishing glasses until they gleamed like crystal. Every detail mattered tonight, not because of any food critic or wealthy guest, but because of one woman who had never once believed in me. At exactly 7 o'clock, they arrived. I didn't greet them immediately. Instead, I watched from the mezzanine above the dining hall, hidden by tinted glass. From there, I had the perfect view of my family stepping into Aurelia as if they were royalty entering a palace. My mother was the first through the door. She wore her pearl necklace, the one she reserved for moments when appearances mattered most. Her posture was immaculate, every movement calculated to signal refinement. Clara followed behind her, radiant in a designer dress I could never have afforded in my early 20s. She already had her phone in hand, snapping photos of the golden glow of the lobby, posting them to her social media as though the world needed to know she belonged here. And then there was Dad. He looked older, more worn than I remembered. His hair was streaked with silver now, his shoulders slightly hunched, but his smile, that same warm, dependable smile, was still there. It broke something open inside me to see him walk into my restaurant, unaware that everything around him existed because of the lessons he had given me. The maitre d' approached them with the smooth confidence we had trained into every staff member. "Good evening, Carter family," he said warmly. "We have reserved the finest table for you." My mother's chest swelled with pride, as though the greeting had been meant specifically for her status. "Yes, we're here for Mr. Carter's birthday," she said, her voice carrying the same authority she used at social gatherings. They were led to a table in the corner, perfectly positioned beneath the crystal chandelier that cast a soft glow over the linen-draped surface. Wine was poured. Menus were presented. The performance of elegance unfolded as seamlessly as we had rehearsed. I descended the stairs slowly, my heels clicking softly against the polished floor. I didn't approach them right away. Instead, I lingered near the bar, close enough to hear the murmur of their conversation. "I still can't believe Emily isn't here," Clara said with a faint laugh, her eyes glued to her phone screen. Honestly, it's probably better this way. She never knows how to act in places like this. Yes, my mother agreed, adjusting her pearl necklace. These kinds of restaurants aren't for people like her. She'd have been so out of place. I told her it was better not to come. No use embarrassing herself. My chest tightened, but I forced myself to stay calm. Dad's voice broke through. She's my daughter. She should be here. Don't be ridiculous, Mom dismissed quickly, sipping her wine. You don't want her sitting here awkwardly, unable to afford even an appetizer. This night is about us, about showing we belong here. Emily doesn't fit that image. Her words landed with the same poisonous sting they always had. But tonight was different. Tonight, I didn't feel small beneath them. Tonight, those words bounced off the armor I had built from years of sweat, sacrifice, and determination. The first course arrived. Seared scallops dressed in saffron butter, arranged artfully on white porcelain. Clara gasped in delight, angling her phone to capture the dish in perfect lighting. "This is incredible," she murmured, taking a delicate bite. "No wonder this place is so expensive," my mother added approvingly. "Finally, a restaurant worthy of us. Not like the cheap little diners Emily always drags herself to." I knew then that the moment had come. I walked toward their table, each step measured, deliberate. Dad noticed me first. His eyes widened, his hand pausing halfway to his glass. "Emily," he whispered. Clara looked up, startled. My mother's expression shifted immediately into one of irritation, her lips tightening into a disapproving line. "What are you doing here?" she asked sharply. I stopped just short of the table, offering a calm smile. "I just wanted to make sure everything was perfect for you tonight." Her eyes narrowed. "Perfect? You don't work here. You can't even afford." Before she could finish, the maitre d' appeared at my side, bowing slightly. "Miss Carter, the chef is ready with your family's special course. Shall we proceed with your instructions?" The blood drained from my mother's face. Dad looked around in confusion. "Ms. Carter." The maitre d' beamed. "Of course. Ms. Emily Carter, the owner of Aurelia." The silence that followed was deafening. My mother's hand froze against her wine glass, her pearl necklace suddenly looking like a chain around her neck. Clara's mouth fell open. Dad's eyes filled with something I hadn't seen directed at me in years. Pure, unfiltered pride. I stood there, letting the truth settle over them, heavier than any lecture or accusation I could have given. For once, I didn't need to defend myself. The walls around us, the chandeliers above, the plates on their table, all of it spoke louder than I ever could. And in that silence, the balance of power shifted forever. The silence that followed the maitre d's announcement seemed to stretch on forever, thick and suffocating. For once in my life, my mother had no words. Her eyes darted around the room, as though searching for some hidden explanation, some trick that would undo what she had just heard. But there was no undoing it. The truth had been spoken. I was the owner. Dad was the first to recover, his voice warm with disbelief. "Emily, this place, it's yours." I nodded softly. "Yes, Dad. Every corner, every detail. This is what I've been building all these years." His smile trembled with pride, his eyes glistening under the chandelier's light. For a moment, all I wanted to do was hug him, to feel the safety I hadn't known since childhood. But my mother's sharp inhale cut through that fragile tenderness like glass. "You expect me to believe this?" she said finally, her tone brittle. "A restaurant of this caliber. You, Emily. Don't be ridiculous." Her words were knives, but they no longer pierced me. I stood straighter, letting the confidence I had forged from struggle rise to the surface. "You don't have to believe me," I replied evenly. "Look around you. This is mine. Every detail you see, every dish you taste." Clara spoke up then, her voice small but edged with disbelief. Wait, so you're saying you're successful now? Like, really successful? I glanced at her. Yes, Clara. While you were busy curating your image online, I was building this. Her lips parted but no sound came out. For once, my sister had no clever remark, no smug laugh. Dad reached for my hand across the table. Emily, I'm so proud of you, he said, his voice thick with emotion. You've done something incredible. My mother scoffed, snapping the fragile moment in two. Pride. She abandoned us, Robert. She walked away from this family, and now she expects us to applaud her. I didn't abandon anyone, I said sharply, my composure finally cracking. I left because you never believed in me. Because every word out of your mouth was a reminder that I was a failure, that I would never measure up. This, I gestured around the room, is the result of walking away from your cruelty. Her face hardened, her jaw tight. Don't twist this around, Emily. You always were dramatic. If you just listened to me, maybe you wouldn't have wasted years chasing nonsense. I laughed bitterly, though it hurt. Nonsense. You're sitting in it, Mother. You're eating it. This nonsense is the very thing you told me I wasn't capable of. The tension thickened until even the waiters seemed hesitant to approach. Clara shifted uncomfortably, glancing between us like she was watching a storm she hadn't prepared for. Dad's hand remained on mine, steady, grounding. The second course arrived. Handmade pasta with truffle cream, one of our signature dishes. The scent filled the air, rich and decadent, but no one at the table reached for their forks. Finally, Dad spoke, his voice quiet but firm. Helen, can't you see what she's done? All those nights you mocked her for dreaming, all those years you dismissed her. And look where she is now. Emily deserves our respect. My mother bristled at his words, her pride clearly warring with reality. She turned her gaze on me, cold and cutting. Respect is earned, not demanded. And I don't hand mine out so easily. You never had any to give, I whispered almost to myself. Her eyes narrowed, sharp as needles. Watch your tone. For the first time in my life, I didn't shrink under that look. I met her gaze head-on, my voice steady. No, Mother. You watch yours. Because tonight isn't about you. It's about Dad. And if you can't sit here and be proud of what your daughter has accomplished, then maybe you don't deserve this table. The words hung in the air, a challenge she wasn't expecting. For once, her authority didn't crush me. It bounced off the fortress I had built inside myself. Dad cleared his throat gently, breaking the tension. Emily, tell me more about how you built this. How did you do it? I turned to him, grateful for the lifeline. And so I told him. I spoke about the nights Marco and I stayed up until dawn testing recipes. About the months we lived off scraps because every penny went into renting the first tiny space. About the critics who laughed at us, the landlords who doubted us, the banks that rejected loan after loan until we clawed our way forward with nothing but determination. As I spoke, Dad listened intently. His expression filled with awe. Even Clara leaned forward slightly, her phone forgotten on the table. But my mother, she sat rigid, her lips pressed into a thin line, refusing to let admiration soften her. When I finished, Dad squeezed my hand. You are everything I hoped you'd become, Emily. Strong, determined, unstoppable. Your grandfather would have been proud too. The mention of him, my grandfather, the only other person who had ever truly believed in me, brought a lump to my throat. He had passed when I was just starting culinary school, never getting to see the dream fulfilled. Thank you, Dad, I whispered, my voice breaking slightly. But even in that tender moment, my mother couldn't resist her venom. You think running a restaurant makes you better than us. Don't get comfortable. Success doesn't last forever. One mistake, one wrong decision, and it all crumbles. Her words stung, not because they held truth, but because they revealed her fear. My success was the one thing she couldn't control, the one narrative she couldn't twist. I leaned forward, my voice low but steady. Maybe it will crumble someday. But even if it does, I'll rebuild. That's the difference between us. I don't fear starting over because I've done it before. You, on the other hand, can't survive a world where you're not on top. Her face flushed, her mask finally cracking. For the first time in years, I saw something beneath the polished exterior, something almost like vulnerability. Clara shifted again, clearly uncomfortable. "Can we just enjoy dinner?" she murmured, her voice small. But it was too late. The fractures in our family had already widened into chasms, and there was no going back. Dessert was served. Dad's favorite, a delicate lemon tart with candied peel. The glow in his eyes as he took the first bite was worth everything, every struggle, every sleepless night. "This," he said softly, "is the best birthday I've ever had." And in that moment, I realized something. This night wasn't about revenge anymore. It wasn't about proving my mother wrong. It was about reclaiming the bond with my father, the one person who had never stopped believing in me. Still, the war with my mother was far from over. Her pride wouldn't allow her to admit defeat so easily. I could see it in the way she avoided my gaze, the way her fork scraped too hard against the porcelain, the way her hands trembled slightly as she adjusted her necklace. The evening was drawing to a close, but I knew this was only the beginning. My mother would fight to reassert control, to diminish me once more. But I wasn't the same girl who had once cowered under her words. I was Emily Carter, owner of Aurelia. And for the first time I had the upper hand. The glow of my father's birthday evening lingered in the air like the faint scent of lemon zest from the dessert we just shared. Guests in the restaurant had gone about their meals unaware that, at one corner table, a family war was quietly unfolding beneath the candlelight. As the plates were cleared and the soft music swelled in the background, I felt both exhilarated and uneasy. For the first time I had shown my family who I had become. For the first time my father looked at me with unshaken pride. But my mother's silence, sharp and deliberate, told me this was not the end. She was planning her counterstrike. I had grown up recognizing the signs, the tightness in her jaw, the way she adjusted her pearl necklace like armor, the flicker of her eyes that meant calculations were forming behind them. My mother had never accepted losing control, and tonight in my restaurant she had been cornered. She would not stay cornered for long. The staff began to prepare for the final part of the evening, presenting Dad with a small cake designed especially for him. Golden sponge layers filled with citrus cream, decorated with sugared violets. It wasn't on the menu. It was a creation Marco and I had reserved for only the most important guests. The maitre d' approached with it, candles lit, the glow reflecting in Dad's smiling eyes. The surrounding tables clapped softly as the cake was placed before him. For that brief moment, joy took center stage. Dad laughed, leaning forward to blow out the candles, and for a heartbeat, everything felt as it should. A family celebrating together. But my mother was never one to let joy linger too long. "That's quite the show you've put on tonight, Emily," she said suddenly, her voice cutting through the laughter. I stiffened, sensing the dagger hidden in her tone. "It's not a show. It's a celebration for Dad." Her smile was tight, her words dripping with controlled venom. "Oh, of course. But I have to wonder, how sustainable is all this? Restaurants fail every day. You know that, don't you?" The table grew tense. Clara looked down at her phone again, suddenly engrossed, though her ears were clearly tuned to every word. Dad's hand froze on the fork, his expression clouding. I forced my voice to remain calm. "This restaurant isn't failing. We've been fully booked for months. Our reputation is strong, our finances solid." Her laugh was short, dismissive. "Finances? Emily, you've never been good with money. You used to struggle just to pay your rent. Do you expect us to believe you suddenly became a businesswoman overnight? My heart pounded, but I didn't flinch. I didn't become anything overnight. This was years of work, of sacrifice. And yes, I've learned how to run a business, because I had no choice but to learn. Dad's voice rose, sharper than I'd heard in years. Helen, stop it. Can't you see what she's done? Why must you always tear her down? Because someone has to keep her grounded, my mother snapped, turning on him. Look at this spectacle. It's arrogance dressed up as success. She'll burn out, Robert. They always do. And when she does, where will that leave her? Her eyes landed on me again, cold and unyielding. Back where she started, alone with nothing. The words struck deeper than I wanted to admit. Alone. With nothing. That fear had haunted me for years as I scraped by, fighting to keep my dream alive. And she knew it. She knew exactly which wounds to press. But I wasn't that frightened girl anymore. I drew a steadying breath and looked her directly in the eyes. You're wrong. I'm not alone. I have people who believe in me, Marco, my team, my customers, and most importantly, Dad. And as for having nothing, I built this from nothing once already. I can do it again if I have to. For a flicker of a second, I saw something break in her expression. Uncertainty, maybe even fear. But she quickly masked it, lifting her chin higher. Clara finally spoke, her tone hesitant. Mom, maybe Emily's not exaggerating. I mean, look around. This place is incredible. People online are raving about it. I've seen the reviews. My mother's glare silenced her instantly, but the damage was done. Clara had acknowledged my success, and that acknowledgement weakened my mother's wall. Dad reached across the table again. His voice soft but firm. Helen, let it go. This is Emily's achievement. Tonight is supposed to be about family, not tearing each other apart. My mother said nothing. She simply picked up her glass of wine, her fingers trembling slightly, and sipped with calculated poise. But I knew her too well. Her silence wasn't surrender, it was strategy. After dessert, I excused myself briefly to the kitchen. The staff gathered around, their faces glowing with pride. They had heard the whispers, seen the tension, and yet they looked at me not with pity but with admiration. You handled that well, Marco murmured, handing me a glass of water. I exhaled, finally allowing the mask of composure to crack for a moment. She won't stop, Marco. She'll find another way to cut me down. He placed a reassuring hand on my shoulder. Then let her try. You've already won, Emily. The fact that she's fighting this hard means she knows it too. His words steadied me. He was right. My mother's cruelty wasn't proof of her strength. It was proof of her fear. Fear that I had escaped her control. Fear that her narrative about me no longer held power. When I returned to the dining hall, Dad was laughing softly with the waiter who had brought the cake, Clara scrolling through her phone, her expression conflicted. My mother sat stiff, her eyes fixed on the chandelier as though its glow might distract her from the reality she refused to accept. I took my seat again, folding my hands in my lap. For years I had craved her approval, hungered for a word of praise, for acknowledgement that I was enough. But sitting there, surrounded by the world I had built, I realized something profound. I didn't need her approval anymore. Her acceptance, or lack of it, no longer defined me. Still, a storm was brewing. I could feel it in the way her fingers tapped against the glass stem, in the way her lips pursed tighter with every passing second. My mother was plotting something, and I knew this battle wasn't over. But I was ready now. For the first time in my life, I wasn't afraid of her. That night ended with hugs for Dad, awkward goodbyes with Clara, and a cold, lingering glance from my mother that promised more to come. As I watched them walk out of Aurelia, her pearls glinting beneath the golden lights, I knew this was only the beginning of a deeper war. And deep down I also knew this. The next time she tried to strike, I would not just defend myself. I would rise higher, stronger, and she would finally understand that her shadow no longer ruled me. The days after my father's birthday dinner should have been peaceful. The restaurant buzzed with life, tables filled every night, and our waiting list grew longer with each passing week. Aurelia thrived, and for a brief moment, I allowed myself to believe my mother would simply fade back into her world of social events and sharp judgments. But I should have known better. Control was her lifeblood, and the night of Dad's birthday had stripped it from her. In her mind, I hadn't just embarrassed her. I had overpowered her in front of the very man whose approval she guarded jealously. That was something she would never forgive. The storm arrived in whispers. It began with a bad review online. Overpriced, overrated, and run by amateurs. The post read, signed under the name Honest Diner 45. I frowned at it, but one negative review among dozens of glowing ones wasn't unusual. Restaurants couldn't please everyone. Then another appeared. And another. Suddenly, Aurelia's perfect ratings began to dip, little cracks in the image I had worked so hard to polish. Each review was strangely specific, filled with details only someone who had been inside could know. What dishes we served that week, what the decor looked like. Marco noticed it too. "This doesn't feel random," he said one evening, scanning the screen of my laptop. "These reviews are too coordinated. They're written to wound, not to critique." I didn't want to believe it, but deep in my gut, I already knew. My mother's voice echoed in my memory. One mistake, one wrong decision, and it all crumbles. She was trying to make that prophecy come true. A week later, the first rumor reached me. A supplier I had worked with for months called, hesitant. "Emily, I don't know what's going on, but I've been hearing things. Whispers that Aurelia doesn't pay its bills, that you're drowning in debt. Is everything all right?" My hands tightened around the phone. "That's not true," I said firmly. "We're financially stable. Whoever told you that is lying." But even as I spoke, dread crept through me. This wasn't coincidence. My mother was spreading poison through the same social circles she had ruled for decades. Circles where reputation mattered more than truth. By the second week, customers started canceling reservations. "We heard the food isn't safe," one caller muttered before hanging up. Another claimed they had read somewhere that we were under investigation for health violations. A complete fabrication. The poison was spreading faster than I could contain it. I confronted Clara first. She met me at a cafe downtown, her face half hidden behind oversized sunglasses. "Emily, you don't understand," she said, stirring her coffee nervously. "Mom's, she's furious. She said you humiliated her in front of Dad. She's telling everyone she can that your restaurant is a fraud." The words sank like stones in my stomach. "And you? Do you believe her?" Clara looked away. "I don't know what to believe. You're my sister, but Mom's voice is loud. And people listen to her." Her uncertainty stung worse than the lies themselves. I realized then that I couldn't rely on my sister's loyalty. Not when she was still orbiting my mother's influence. So I turned to the only family I could count on, Dad. We met one evening after service, just the two of us in the quiet dining hall of Aurelia. He looked tired, his face lined with the weight of years caught between two opposing forces, my mother's control and my defiance. "Emily," he said softly, "I've been hearing things, ugly things, about the restaurant. About you." I swallowed hard. "It's her, Dad. She's behind all of it. The reviews, the rumors, the cancellations. She can't stand that I've succeeded without her approval, so she's trying to tear it all down." He sighed heavily, rubbing his temples. "I believe you. Course I do. But your mother, she's relentless. When she decides to destroy something, she doesn't stop until it's ashes." I reached for his hand, gripping it tightly. "Then I'll fight her. She underestimates me, Dad. She always has. But this is my life's work. I won't let her take it away. For the first time, I saw something fierce in his eyes, a spark of resistance against the woman who had ruled his world for so long. "Then I'll stand with you," he said firmly. His words gave me strength. If my father could finally resist her control, then maybe, just maybe, others would too. The next day, I called an emergency meeting with my staff. We gathered in the kitchen, the air heavy with fear and uncertainty. "They're saying horrible things out there," one waiter admitted. "Customers ask if we're going to shut down. It's hard to know what to tell them." I looked around the room, at the faces of the people who had built this dream with me, who had sacrificed alongside me. "Listen to me," I said firmly. "We know the truth. We know the quality of our food, our service, our integrity. No rumor can change that. What we need to do now is show the world who we are, loudly, proudly, and without apology." Marco stepped forward. "So what's the plan?" I took a deep breath. "We fight fire with light. We open our doors wider. We invite critics, influencers, anyone willing to see for themselves. We host charity nights, cooking classes, community events. We drown her lies in undeniable truth." The staff nodded, their fear replaced with determination. The poison might be strong, but we had something stronger: authenticity. That week, Aurelia became more than a restaurant. It became a movement. We hosted a fundraiser for a local shelter, donating every dollar earned that night. We invited food bloggers to cook alongside Marco in the kitchen, giving them an unfiltered view of our process. We launched an open tour, showing guests how meticulously we sourced our ingredients, how spotless our kitchen remained. Slowly, the tide began to turn. The same internet that had carried the poison now carried the antidote. Photos, videos, testimonials of guests who had seen the truth for themselves. But I knew better than to believe the war was over. My mother wasn't finished. She had underestimated me once, and she would not make that mistake again. The final confrontation was coming. I could feel it. And this time I wouldn't just defend myself. I would dismantle her lies in front of everyone. The weeks following our campaign of transparency were some of the hardest of my life. The restaurant bustled with events, the staff worked tirelessly, and for every lie my mother whispered into the world, we answered with truth. But beneath it all, I could feel the pressure mounting. This wasn't a battle of food or service anymore. It was a battle of power. And power was the only language my mother understood. Then came the gala. Every year, the city's most influential figures gathered for the foundation's charity dinner, a glittering night of wealth and pride. My mother had attended for as long as I could remember, her pearls catching the light as she basked in the admiration of her peers. This year, however, I had been invited as well. Aurelia was chosen as the exclusive caterer. It was an opportunity but also a stage. And I knew without doubt, my mother would use it against me. The night of the gala, I dressed not in the apron and chef's whites that had defined me for years, but in a sleek black gown that whispered confidence. Marco squeezed my hand before we left. "You don't have to prove anything to her," he murmured. "I know," I replied, steadying my breath. "But tonight isn't about her approval. It's about making sure her lies can't breathe another day." The venue glittered with chandeliers, the air thick with perfume and money. Guests floated across the marble floors, glasses of champagne in hand, voices rising in practiced laughter. At the center of it all was my mother, radiant in a gown of emerald silk, her pearl necklace gleaming like a crown. She saw me the moment I entered. Her smile was razor-sharp. "Emily," she said loudly, drawing the attention of those nearby. "What a surprise!" "Not a greeting, an opening move." "Not a surprise," I replied calmly. "I'm here because Aurelia is tonight's caterer." A murmur rippled through the crowd. My mother's smile faltered, but she recovered quickly. "Oh yes, I heard something about that. How generous of them to give you such exposure. Though I do hope the food is safe. The words dropped like poison into the air. A few guests chuckled nervously. Others looked uncertain. I felt the familiar sting, but this time I didn't flinch. Instead, I lifted my chin. Why don't you let the guests decide for themselves? I gestured toward the dining tables, where servers carried trays of our finest dishes. Seared salmon with citrus glaze, wild mushroom risotto, delicate towers of pastry. The crowd moved, curiosity overtaking suspicion. Plates were taken, bites tasted, and soon the room filled with hums of delight. Compliments spread like fire. Exquisite, remarkable, the best I've had in years. For every smile I saw, my mother's mask cracked a little more. But she wasn't finished. As the speeches began, she took the stage. Her voice, elegant and commanding, carried across the hall. Tonight, we gather not only to give, but to uphold the standards of our community, she said, her eyes sweeping over the audience before landing on me. Standards that must be protected from pretenders. From those who rise quickly, only to fall just as fast. We cannot allow reputations built on sand to represent us. It was a masterful attack, veiled in charity and righteousness. The crowd shifted uneasily, their eyes flicking between us. My heart pounded, but I knew this was the moment. If I stayed silent, her poison would spread unchecked. If I spoke, I had to strike clean and true. I rose from my seat and walked to the stage. The murmurs grew louder. My mother's smile froze as I took the microphone from the podium. For years, I began, my voice steady. I let my mother define me. To her I was always too small, too weak, too foolish to succeed. She told me I couldn't afford my father's birthday dinner. She told me my dreams were nonsense. And when I proved her wrong, she spread lies to tear me down. Gasps rippled through the audience. My mother's face flushed, but I didn't stop. But look around you. You've tasted the food. You've seen the truth with your own eyes. Aurelia was not built on sand. It was built on sacrifice, on sleepless nights, on the determination of a team that refused to give up. My success isn't an illusion. It's the reality my mother could never accept. I turned to her then, my voice soft but sharp. You wanted to destroy me, Mother. But all you've done is show me that I don't need your approval. I never did. The silence that followed was electric. Then, one by one, applause began to spread. First softly, then louder, until the hall filled with clapping. Some guests even rose to their feet. My mother stood frozen, her mask shattered, her power slipping like water through her hands. For the first time, she was no longer the center of the room. It was. After the gala, Dad found me outside beneath the cool night sky. His eyes shone with pride. You've done it, Emily, he said, his voice thick with emotion. You've broken free. I hugged him tightly, feeling the weight of years of silence and doubt finally lift. I didn't do it to beat her, I whispered. I did it to stand on my own. He pulled back, smiling. And you did. More than anyone could have imagined. The war with my mother didn't end in one night. People like her don't surrender. They retreat, they plot, they wait for the next chance. But I no longer feared her. Because I had faced her poison and survived. Because I had found strength not in her approval, but in my own resilience. And because at last I understood. The greatest revenge wasn't destroying her. It was living fully, freely, and undeniably beyond her shadow.